another podcast with Jerry. And today I have Jessica Ann on the podcast as a guest. And Jessica is a resilience coach. And welcome, Jessica.
Thank you so much for having me, Jerry. I'm excited.
Yeah, thank you for volunteering to be on here.
Of
um,
course.
yeah, usually with guests, I ask them where they are today before kind of delving into their story. So, like, what do you do today? What's your life like today?
So from my coaching standpoint, attending a lot of podcasts, writing a lot of different articles on resilience, joy, women in leadership. I'm currently writing a book. It comes out in January. It's called Dancing in the Shower, Uncovering Radical Resilience to Live a Life You Love. And then I'm also part of an anthology book that's coming out in September. And it's called, I can't remember right now.
No, that's fine. So you're pretty busy with with writing and other items in your life as well. Kind of in your bio, I read that you have three daughters, right? Um,
I do.
so what was it like, kind of raising your daughters?
Oh my gosh. They are my life. Brought me so much joy. Um, three girls are pretty incredible to manage. When they turn about 10 or 11, they turn into different little monsters. Um, yeah, the hormones change and they don't know who they are. But it's still like every year of their life has been fun. And I really love it where we're at right now. My oldest is 28. My second is 23, and my youngest is 20. My youngest still lives with me. We make pretty good roommates. And then my other two daughters are within a mile and a half of me. And every Sunday we have family dinner together. So it's amazing.
Yeah, no, I have. I kind of chuckled when you were saying during the teenage years that they're uh, I forget the word you used, but but I have two daughters, so I definitely resonate with that. Like when they were going through their teenage years, it was challenging.
Yeah.
So, how, like, if we were to go back more into your youth, into high school or middle school, who were you like back then?
Oh, goodness. I've always been a people pleaser, whether that's a positive or negative thing, I'm still not sure. I always wanted to do the very best I could in whatever it was, whether it was school, sports, being the best daughter, being the best friend, trying my hardest in everything and I did was super important to me.
Hmm. Well,
Um,
did you play any
yeah, go
sports?
ahead.
Did you play any sports during that time?
I did. I played volleyball and softball.
Okay. What position did you play in volleyball?
Um, I was the setter.
Okay.
Yeah, and then in softball, I was right field. Not the best player of softball, but I still like the camaraderie.
Yeah. Did you play all 4 years in high school of volleyball?
I didn't, just two.
Okay. What was your experience like in volleyball?
I loved it. It challenged me physically and mentally. I had a coach who thought that we were a track team instead of a volleyball team. So running the mile was a consistent thing, running lines, a lot of calisthenic training. Um, but again, I loved the camaraderie. I'm still friends with one of the girls that was on that team today.
Nice.
So yeah, I love sports.
Did you play it after high school at all or no?
I played a little bit of like church volleyball and some community softball, but nothing really serious, just fun.
Okay. No, I used to play in high school as well, and I kind of
Oh,
took it throughout my life. And I played after high school as well, just like in men's leagues and pickup and things like that. It's definitely a fun sport.
it is for sure.
Yeah. So during high school, would you say were you more kind of introverted or extroverted? Did you have a lot of a big circle of friends or a small circle of friends?
I was very protective in that I was picky about who I surrounded myself with. I would say I was an extroverted introvert, which I believe I'm still that way today. I feel that even as a young girl, I always had a lot of really great leadership qualities. Um, People would look to me like, what are we going to do this weekend? Or what do you think about this? It's just something that I stepped into very naturally.
Okay. So even from that kind of high school age, other your peers kind of looked up to you for direction, whatever that direction was.
Yeah, they did.
Okay. So natural kind of leader. That's great. So after high school, did you go on to like college, or did you go into the workforce, or like what happened?
Well, I got married really young,
Okay.
18. I wasn't pregnant, just got married young. We started a family a couple years later. So by the time I was 20, I was a mom. So all my college courses that I did take were kind of interwoven into being a mom, working a full-time job. And so I actually never completed a degree. It's one of those things that I feel like I missed, but I've been so successful in my career that I don't necessarily see a need to go back and finish at this point, anyway.
What would you say to let's say a young girl that's kind of either a junior or senior in high school and is deciding what to do with her life? Like, what advice would you give her in terms of what direction to pick in life, or how to even come to a conclusion or to a choice?
Oh, goodness. It's hard because all of my girls are so different. So, all three of my girls did get a technical license of some sort before they graduated high school. My oldest is a nationally certified pharmacy tech, technician. Sorry, I have a little bit of an echo. It sounds weird. That's okay. Um, my middle daughter got her CNA license, and then my youngest got her medical assistant license. So this allowed my kids the ability to work while they were going to school or whatever they decided to do. Um, so my recommendation would be, get out in the workforce, give a feel for what you might like, might not like. But I think community college is a really great choice for young girls, kind of who were sitting on the fence about whether they should go to university and get a degree. Go to the community college and take some courses, see what interests them before they make a decision about what they want their degree in.
Okay. And like you mentioned, you got married young. Looking back, do you find that it was a positive thing or a negative thing, or like how do you look at it, kind of looking back, like now that you have a hindsight is 2020?
Um, Gosh, I look at my girls now and think, no way would my 20-year-old be ready to be married. So looking back now, I think I was young and dumb. I got three beautiful daughters out of it, which I am so grateful for. My marriage was rocky from the start. We tried really hard for 27 years to keep it together.
Hmm.
but ultimately separated at about the 27-year mark. um, so, it was hard. Like, I definitely took the hard path, getting married early, having kids early. And like I said, super grateful for my kids. I'm super grateful for the life I have right now, and realize that that wouldn't be who I am if that all didn't happen. But, hindsight being what it is, I probably wouldn't have chose to get married so young.
What would you say that young girls should be kind of looking for or thinking about if they're thinking about getting married, or relationships kind of right in that high school to college age?
Yeah, so I would say watch out for manipulation. If your partner is really manipulative or gaslights you, or is controlling anyway, you really need to step back and question that. Um, it, it only gets worse, I would say. It doesn't get better. So just be really aware. Does he allow you to have your independence? Does he support your successes? Is he okay if you're separate from him, or does he demand your attention 100% of your time? These are all red flags that you should really be looking out for sure.
Would you say kind of if a person's in some kind of a manipulative relationship, that potentially they're kind of hoping for the best and maybe ignoring the red flags, or not even seeing them, or kind of overlooking them somehow?
Um, so I think that so many of us just want to be loved by someone, and actually feel honored to receive the love from someone. And so I think that when we're young and a little bit naive, we often overlook those flags because it just feels so good to be loved by somebody.
Hmm. So kind of transitioning over to a different topic. After high school, you got married. Were you basically a stay-at-home mom at that point, or you mentioned you were also working, right?
I was working, yeah. So I actually got into the pharmacy at Kmart when I was 18 years old. And I went ahead and got nationally certified as a certified pharmacy technician, and I got my state licensing. And I worked as a pharmacy technician for 10 years,
Hmm.
full time. We worked it out. So my husband would work early from like 7 to 3, and then I would go 3:30 to 9 o'clock every night while the kids were young. And then when my second child came, it actually moved into, like, I work day shifts as well, and we use daycare to kind of support that schedule of both of us working.
So, kind of again, like right now, you're an entrepreneur. Kind of, you have your own coaching practice or coaching services. But looking back at that period in your life, um, what do you think, or like how? What was your life like then? Because it sounds like very busy, very hectic, and compared to what your life is now, would do you sometimes wish that you had started something like this earlier? I guess is the question.
So, if I do a comparison, you're right. That life was super busy. I was very involved in how my kids felt, what my kids needed, what my husband was requiring. And I definitely didn't put myself first or listen to what it was that I needed in order to feel joy and contentment with my life. Fast forward to now, I put myself first every day. That doesn't mean I don't love my kids or I don't take them into account, but I'm making sure that I'm finding curiosity, adventure, joy in my life all the time so that I can stay resilient to anything life has to give me.
Hmm. And again, in your kind of bio, a little bit about you. You mentioned you went through a lot of challenges in your life. You had cancer and even a heart transplant. Can you describe that a little bit more, or talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, I'd love to. So in 2016, I started feeling just really horrible. My legs were swelling. I was exhausted. I felt short of breath. I went to my primary care physician multiple times. She missed the diagnosis. She thought maybe my thyroid was off or that I had some asthma that was popping up. It wasn't until I was really persistent with her and told her that I felt that there was something wrong with my heart that I actually got the care that I needed. So I finally said in tears and very insistent in my primary care physician's office that there was something wrong with my heart. So they ran an EKG on me.
Hmm.
And it's what they saw is that it came back low voltage, which means the heart's not performing like it should be. So she immediately echoed a stress echo to be done at the hospital. So that's when you get on a treadmill. They test the endurance of your heart, how it can respond to exercise, but also they take an image of your heart. Well, as I was laying on the table getting the image first, the technician says, have you ever had a problem with your heart before? And I said, well, no. And he said, well, have you ever had an echo before? And I said, I have, but nothing showed up. And he said, let me go get the radiologist that's here today. So the radiologist looked at my echo and he said immediately, let me get a cardiologist that's on call. And he pulled the cardiologist in. And this is the first miracle that happened in my life. It was Kia Afshar. He looked at my echo and he immediately knew I had cardiac AL amyloidosis. It's a very, very rare terminal blood cancer. It usually occurs in men over 70 years old. And here I am, 41 years old, so it wasn't making any sense. I left that hospital that day in just complete and utter fear. No way is this my life. What did I just hear? But I chose to put my care in the hands of the doctors and trust that they knew what they were doing. So I started out with outpatient chemo, and then they actually did a bone marrow transplant on
Hmm.
me, which is a really, really difficult thing to go through. You're in a room with positive air pressure. Your family can only visit if they get in full PPE, gloves, gowns, covers for their shoes. So for about a month, I sat in that hospital waiting for my immune system to come back after they killed it. And then I had to wait for several months to see if it worked. It did kick a lot of the disease out, but it didn't get it entirely. So I had to go back on chemo for another 10 months, which was mentally really tough. I thought I would be done after the bone marrow transplant. But when I had to go back on that chemo, it was like this gut punch and it was really hard. But I did 10 months of chemo and I started getting better and I started getting out in the mountains and hiking and enjoying my life. But then slowly I started having symptoms of heart failure
Mm.
and started going to the hospital multiple times because I would literally feel with so much fluid in my body that the only way to get rid of it would be for them to administer a diuretic, which expels the extra water out of my body. Um, and so I did that multiple times throughout the year and the next year. Um, Felt really bad and not good. And I just thought that that was going to be my life. And then in January of 2020, I actually had a really debilitating stroke. They weren't sure if I was going to walk or talk again. So that's another miracle that showed up in my life. I'm
Mm.
walking and I'm talking.
Yeah.
um, but that's the point where we actually got put on the heart transplant list. I was on the heart transplant for 15 months. Um, And then I had to go inpatient into the CICU and lived there for 3 months until I finally got a donor's heart that matched mine. I woke up after my heart transplant and I was ready to live life.
Hmm.
It was like this whole new restart for me. You know, I had been through so much, I had learned so much about myself, how strong I was, what it took to, stay happy during turbulent times. And now my heart's like, good. It's like a 19-year-old's heart in my body, and I'm going to go out and use it as best I can. And I have. I tell you, like, I do some pretty incredible things that really just excite me and bring a lot of joy to my life.
Nice. Were you always kind of joyful and positive even before all this, or have you kind of had a mindset change?
When I was young, I was really joyful, positive, smiley. Um, my marriage wore on me pretty badly, and I kind of started to shut down emotionally just to deal with, you know, everyday life in a marriage that's pretty sad.
Mhm.
um, but through this, everything I'd been through, it definitely showed so many things that I was grateful for. Like, and it was little things. It could have been just the new leaves that were coming on the tree, or the smell of fresh cut grass, coffee, a smile from a stranger, just how kind all of the providers were to me at the hospital. Um, and that gratitude, like, brought my vibration up to where, I started getting really curious about all the things that I'd wanted to do for the last 27 years and hadn't. Um, so there were several things. I wanted to learn how to quilt.
Mhm.
I tried. I don't love it.
Mhm.
It stresses me out a little bit because I'm not perfect at it. I also wanted to learn to watercolor. So I did a lot of watercoloring, which I do love. And that actually teaches me that it's okay not to be perfect. But the one thing that I've really fallen in love with, well, there's a couple, but fly fishing, I
Okay.
love it. I'm actually gonna head out tonight to go fly fishing up in the Uinta Mountains in Utah.
Nice.
And I've also gone on several backpacking trips where I've had like 35 to 40 pound packs on my back, and we hike into the mountains and we camp and just really enjoy the solitude. So it's
Awesome.
been really awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you feel, or what do you sense, or what do you think kind of got you through all those challenges in your life?
I really think it's that grateful heart is the foundation of it. Um, I, I, I don't know. There's just something about gratitude that brings the vibration inside you higher. And with gratitude comes joy. And then those two together create a very radical resilience that is really unwavering. As long as you're feeling the cup of gratitude and joy, resilience comes along with it.
Yeah. So you mentioned like you played volleyball at a church, and you mentioned miracles as well. What is kind of sounds like you grew up in church. What's your view on church or Christianity and that world?
So that's a good question. I was actually raised Mormon,
Okay.
but I decided that wasn't for me as a young adult. So that said, I'm just very spiritual. I definitely believe that there's a higher power working with us and for us to make sure that we feel part of this world. Um, I find a lot of spirituality in nature. Um, I don't know. Like, I know there's a higher power. I just don't know who that is, but
Hmm.
I feel it. Like, I can feel it deep. And
Hmm.
I definitely feel that I was watched over throughout this entire health journey that I've been on.
Yeah. I mean, definitely like surviving through those kind of challenges. Yeah, I don't know. Like from my perspective, there's got to be some help from outside somewhere.
I would agree.
Yeah. Um, so you mentioned you have this kind of passion for hiking and fly fishing and so on. Have you always had that, or did you develop that over time?
So I liked camping as a kid. We did it in my family, multiple times a year, and I loved it. My dad was a hunter and would often take me hunting with him, which meant hiking through the mountains. But again, as I got married, had young kids and things, I just really didn't do it. But the fly fishing thing. So as a teenager, the movie A River Runs Through It came out. It had Robert Redford and Brad Pitt in it.
Hmm.
And as a teenage girl, I went for the eye candy, I'll admit it. But I left with this fascination of how beautiful fly fishing was. And I had always thought about it from that point forward and wanted to do it, but I didn't know how to do it. My husband didn't want to do it with me. So busy with my corporate career that I just put it aside. And it wasn't until I was sitting in the hospital waiting for a heart, I started watching YouTube videos on how to fly fish. I mean, I learned everything from the reel setup, what type of flies to use, different techniques, how to cast. And then I ordered a rod off of Amazon that was waiting at my house for when I got home from the hospital. So it went from there.
Okay. And then you developed kind of the passion for it, or like you learned about it
Uh-huh.
ahead, and then you
Yeah.
been doing it for a
Uh-huh.
while now?
Since spring of 2022.
Okay.
So I've got a lot to learn and skills to master, but oh my goodness, it's so cathartic and you get to be part of nature and the ecosystem. And so it's not like just about fly fishing, it's about patience and learning a new skill, being curious about what would happen if you dropped your line over there. It's about learning about water patterns and what type of fish it bites certain flies. Like, there's so much involved in it, and it's like it fuels all my like joy cultivating things like curiosity, adventure, all those things. And it's just simply amazing.
Yeah. What's the difference between fly fishing and I don't know regular? I'm not a fisherman, so I have very
Yeah.
little information on fishing.
Yeah, so I would say fly fishing, at least for me, is more active. Regular fishing, you can just throw a line out and sit, which some people might enjoy better. But I like that repetitive motion and strategy that's always going on throughout the process of fly fishing. I've done both, but I prefer the fly fishing.
So it's basically you're casting and reeling it in right away, and then casting again, just kind of
Yeah,
ongoing. Okay.
yeah, pretty much.
Um, okay. And is it only on rivers, or do you do that on bodies of like water, like lakes or things like that? Or
Both.
okay.
Yeah, both. Uh-huh.
What kind of
Small
fish have you?
streams, rivers, lake.
Yeah. What kind of fish have
Go
you
ahead.
caught?
I have caught every cutthroat in Utah. So Bonneville cutthroat, Yellowstone cutthroat, Colorado cutthroat, um, what else? Bear River cutthroat. Then I've caught all kinds of just brookies, brown trout, all the stuff that's really local to the Utah ecosystem.
Okay.
And I do catch and release. So I don't use a barbed hook, so it comes out easy. I tell the fish thank you, and then I send it on its way.
You don't eat the fish you catch?
Only occasionally, only occasionally.
Yeah. Um, So how did you get started with your resilience coaching? Like how did that idea come about and how did you start it?
It's a very good question. So, when I was sitting waiting for my heart transplant, I kept on getting this really strong impression that I'm meant to do something more and that I'm meant to help other people. I had been in a career of pharmacy benefit management for almost 20 years. Had climbed pretty high in like middle management, like senior director of client management, director of sales, etc. And I had just lost passion for it. It didn't match my value system, and that like impression that I had that I was supposed to help people just kept on kind of haunting me over last year, 2023. And then there were some leadership changes that occurred, and I just took it as a sign that I was ready to leave.
Hmm.
And so I left my career in September and started. I wasn't sure how all this was going to happen, right? When you're an entrepreneur and you have an idea, you don't necessarily know what to do or how to do it. But things kind of just fell in place. I found somebody that would publish my book idea almost immediately. So that was a check mark on the book part. Um, and then I had a business coach who I had attended a webinar on like several years earlier. She calls me and she says, Jessica, this is Ann Bennett. I saw your name on my list and I feel like I was supposed to call you. I was like, all right. So she starts saying, well, what's going on in your life? And I'm like thinking, what's not going on in my life? I'm having a crisis. I just left corporate. I don't know what I'm going to do. And she's like, I can help you with that.
Hmm.
And so I've been working with a business coach from that point on. Um, she's been impeccable as far as branding goes, helping me get opportunities to speak, really helping me set up the foundations of a coaching business. And again, that's one of those things where someone just shows up in your life when you need it. It doesn't necessarily make sense, but it sure did happen, and I'm super grateful for it.
Hmm. So how long ago was that? When did you
That
start?
was in September.
Of last year?
Yeah.
Okay.
And leading up to that, I had spoken to other heart transplant patients and kind of helped them focus on positivity while they were waiting for their hearts and stuff like that. So I've always been kind of, I don't know, just someone people like to talk to because I do have like a positive outlook on life. So I figure I'll leverage it a little.
Yeah. What uh, who do you go after in terms of your customers? Like who are your customers?
Yeah, so I would say my sweet spot is probably women aged 25 to 100. It's anybody really who's stuck in loss or grief and struggling to get to the point where they can find things to be grateful for again. Um, and so I kind of just work with those people who are ready to get unstuck and start living their best life that they can.
What do you find are some of the things that help them get unstuck?
Uh, I think that one, they don't feel alone because they have me in their corner. But really, it's about changing their mindset and look at an outlook on life. Things aren't happening to them, they get to make life happen for them.
Hmm.
And once they can grasp that idea, then we start doing the practice of gratitude. And then we start talking about what makes them curious, what adventures they've always wanted to go on, and really just focus in on that joy and making goals in order to take those experiences into their real life. And it really is like the jump start that they need to really start living their life like it's intended.
Hmm. So joy is something not too many talk about lately. The
Mm-hmm.
word joy. Usually people
Uh-huh.
talking about happy, like they want to be happy, right? Like, how do you define joy versus happiness?
Oh, goodness. Like, happy is a momentary thing in my mind. Like, I'm happy because I finished my homework, or I'm happy because my dog obeyed me. But with joy, it's like all encompassing. It's almost like a way of life if you think about it. Like, I don't know, joy is such just like an exuberant word. It just fills my soul if I think about it. I feel like it's more steadfast than being happy. Um, Happy, it has an end, and joy is an active practice.
Hmm. How about gratefulness versus thankfulness? Like being thankful versus being grateful. Like, how do you define or differentiate between the two?
So when I think thankful, they're so close. I mean, it really depends because you could say that the two are interchangeable terms. But for me, I can say, I'm thankful you came to my life, and it seems kind of shallow. It's just, I'm looking at it and I'm thankful you were there. But with gratitude, I feel like it's more of a feeling, like you're feeling your gratitude. Um, that's the difference it is in myself. I don't know if it's like that for everybody, but with that's how I see the two words different.
How would you recommend somebody kind of practice gratitude? What are some ways of practicing it?
Yeah, so you hear the gratitude journal all the time, and I had started it multiple times throughout my life. And then I would give up on it, and I don't know why. I don't know if it was sheer laziness or what it was, but a gratitude journal really does work. But I break it out into two different entries of the day. So before I go to bed at night, I write down things that I was grateful for. And I feel like having that vibration high right before you go to bed feeling grateful and happy and joyful about what your life was like that day. And then the next morning, I recommend actually writing down three intentions that you have for the day. Like, what would you like to see happen? And between those two practices, um, it's a really great way to start feeling more gratitude in your life. And here's the funny thing about gratitude. I've thought about this a lot over the years. A gratitude practice isn't about finding new things to be grateful for. It's about seeing the things that are already in your life that you can be grateful for.
Hmm.
And the cool thing about gratitude is once you have one or two things on your list, that turns into five or 20. And it's like this beautiful snowball effect. Like you have just a few things and it rolls into this giant basket of gratitude that, like I said, has always been there and you were just missing it because you weren't looking for it.
Yeah. For people who may be down for whatever reason, how do you recommend they get back up in terms of being grateful? Like, how do they find things they can be grateful for in their life? What technique or how should they go about like looking, inspecting their life for good things?
Um, Give yourself grace and patience. But again, it's just about trying to see one little thing maybe that you're grateful for. Maybe it's that you opened your eyes that morning. I also think another great way to maybe cultivate some gratitude in your life is to reach out to someone in your community, whether that be your friends, your family, but somebody who cares about you, and to just have a conversation. There's actually some science I read, and I can't remember who it was published by, but they say a 7-minute conversation with a friend completely changes your mindset and outlook
Hmm.
for the day. So, um, really leaning on those you love when you can't do it yourself is a great strategy to take.
Yeah, that's definitely good advice there. What when it comes to the book that you wrote one book already, right?
It's almost done.
Or almost done.
It's coming out in January. Yeah.
Is there anything you can share about the book?
Sure. So I really dive into my healthcare journey. I share some stories from my youth, which I feel were pertinent to understanding gratitude and resilience. And then I talk about the things that I did to overcome some of the trauma and loss that I had experienced over the last 8 years
Hmm.
in hopes that it will help others, right?
Yeah, definitely. Like if people are going through something similar, I would think hearing another person's story that went through it and is resilient because of it should definitely help. Definitely.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. What kind of going back to parenting? You have three daughters. Uh, Looking back, what would you have done different in terms of raising them, if anything?
A lot. Um, I wish I had had the ability to be more present in the moment. I think I was so tied up in navigating a difficult relationship, working, just making sure. I don't know. It's hard. It was like this machine I was trying to keep running, and it wasn't as heartfelt as I wish it would have been looking back.
Hmm.
And maybe my kids feel differently, but as an adult looking back, that's how I feel.
Do you think there were like certain goals you were trying to achieve, and by just focusing on those goals, you were either overlooking or not focusing as much on the girls, on the family, or
Um, yes, I would say a big goal was not to upset my husband, one. But a second goal was I felt a lot of pride and like I was doing something good with my career. And so I tried to work really hard to climb the corporate ladder. Did a lot of trips out of town for like, oh goodness, 20 years. I was traveling to client meetings, um, company meetings.
hmm.
So yeah, I would say that a lot of focus went there because that's what made me feel good at the time, which I kind of roll my eyes at now, but that's how it was then.
Yeah, I'm just thinking more of like entrepreneurship and
Hmm.
as we like focus on our businesses, sometimes we don't focus enough on the family. Or if we start focusing a lot on the family, then we don't focus potentially on the business. Like, do you think
It's
there
true.
is a balance? Can we focus on all of the important things in our lives and put the right attention into it? What's your view on that?
I definitely think it's possible. I think it's about setting boundaries for yourself because I've noticed as an entrepreneur, my mind is everywhere. I want to do all the things, learn all the applications, do it myself, be successful. And so if I let myself, I could definitely work into the late hours every night, just trying to keep up on all the things I want to learn. I have a very curious mind. But I've been trying to be super careful about creating boundaries so that I am available to the people that I love the most.
Hmm. Do you you mentioned you're curious. Do you feel like you were kind of born with that curiosity, or is that something you developed over time?
Um, I was told that I was born with wise eyes and that I was always looking around. So I think that that curiosity was always part of who I was, for
Hmm.
sure.
Yeah. It seems like there's some people who are more curious than others, definitely.
Yeah.
What else would you want to share as far as the your coaching or anything else related to you?
Um, I would just say that, if they make the decision to put yourself first and to follow the simple equation of gratitude plus joy equals resilience, you can live the happiest life you've ever imagined. I'm definitely doing it. And I love to share how I did it with clients. So I do one on one coaching. I'm also working on creating a workshop, and I love to do speaking events for smaller, large groups. Um, I'm just super excited, and I feel called to what I'm doing and have a lot of passion.
That's definitely great. When you mention that, like putting yourself first, like in my mind, because a lot of people talk about that, like making sure
Mhm.
you take care of yourself, so then you can actually take care of people around you, or like you got to fill your cup before you can fill somebody else's. But do
Mhm.
you think there's like a negative part to that as well? Maybe I guess what I'm thinking is sometimes there's like selfish people out there that automatically they put themselves first,
Mhm.
and they don't necessarily do good for others, right? So like is there like a good version of putting yourself first and a bad version, and what's the difference between the two?
Absolutely. You like hit the nail on the head. There's selfish people out there, right? That take no consideration for anybody around them. And that's the bad putting yourself first. So when I say putting myself first, it's not about shutting everybody else out of my life so that I can get certain things done during a day. But I'm definitely very cognizant about what I put in my body, whether I'm exercising or not. If I feel overwhelmed and I need to ground myself, I take time to do that, whether that's going out in the mountains or maybe it's just taking my socks off and walking barefoot in my grass. I make sure that I'm listening to what I need so that I don't get to a space where I feel resentful and overworked or exhausted, because I definitely have been there. In my corporate job, I felt always completely exhausted, overworked. So I think that that's one of the benefits of being an entrepreneur is that you do have the ability to be more in tune to what you need, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, um, and just prioritizing them the way that they should be.
Hmm. And you mentioned you started kind of looking into nutrition. What have you learned from kind of that field?
Yeah. So when you have heart failure, like you have to make a lot of changes. Low sodium diet, cut down on red meat, make sure you're introducing enough fruits and vegetables into your diet, cut down on fats. And so that kind of regimen has stuck with me up to this day. My kids make fun of me. They say I'm the healthiest eater that they know. But, I really avoid eating out because I don't know how much sodium's going to be in that hamburger. And I try and do my best to plan out meals and grocery shops so that I'm eating at home as much as possible because eating out can really make me feel pretty horrible if I'm not watching what I eat. Um, I don't know. I would say that I'm eating close to what I would consider a Mediterranean diet,
Hmm.
and that seems to work for me. I think it's just about eating the way that makes you feel best, whether that's keto, Mediterranean, and it's not about restriction. It's about finding all of the things that you can eat. Like it's an abundance mindset, actually. It's not about taking away, but actually giving to yourself.
Yeah, so finding the right thing that your body works well under.
Hmm.
I'm kind of what you mentioned earlier, being in tune with yourself. So putting yourself first could apply to many areas of your life, right? Like including food.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Um, any other like interesting stories that you have from your life that you'd want to share with everyone out there?
Oh, goodness, let me think. I have so many stories. Um, so I actually grew up on a farm, which I absolutely loved. My dad was an alfalfa farmer, just like his dad and his dad before.
Hmm.
So I had a lot of great experiences as a child. I got to run through the hay fields, run across haystacks, which I don't recommend because there's little holes that you can fall into. I got to swim in irrigation ditches. I got to be fully independent as a child. And maybe that's what made me want to be so independent as adult ultimately was that independence that I had tasted as a child. I had a really good childhood though. I think my parents think they didn't do a very good job, but maybe that's just how we're supposed to feel looking back is that we didn't do the best job that we could. But I think that my parents did the best job that they ultimately could. I had a pet pig named Susie Sow. This is a good story, actually. She was in a pig pen across the irrigation ditch from my house, behind my house. And I remember this day like so clear. It was my fourth birthday, and all of a sudden there's a scratch on the door. And I knew it was Susie the sow because she would come and want to play. Like she loved me. So she scratched on the door, and I opened the door, and the pig comes in the house. And my house is already full of like 9 or 10 4 year olds running around being crazy.
Hmm.
And now picture a pet pig running through there too. Oh, my mom was at her wits' end by the time they finally got that pig out. I know she wanted all those kids gone, but we still had several hours of the birthday party to put on.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, kind of fun.
Yeah. Some youthful memories there. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, how can people reach out to you if they want to get a hold of you in terms of coaching?
Yeah. So my website is Jessica Ann, so JessicaAnne.org. You can contact me on there. Or you can also catch me on Instagram, and my handle on Instagram is at J Renfeldt. And Renfeldt is spelled REN as in Nancy, F as in fish, EL, D as in dog, T as in toy.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story a little bit and a little bit about your coaching business.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me on today.
Yeah, thank you.